morning. Welcome. This is a follow-along practice, so I can't teach you because I can't see you, but it doesn't matter because it's your responsibility to do exactly what you want. And I would encourage you to, as you're following along, stop when you need, rest when you need. The majority of the session is quite gentle, and then we sort of reorganize ourselves physically a little bit, as well as our kind of general state of being through these gentle physical explorations. Lots of stuff stolen from the Feldenkrais method that I teach. And when things get more powerful or more muscular, I only ever want to go there out of this way of working, which is only if it's not causing pain. So muscular, we're not trying to get rid of all muscular effort. Of course there is muscular effort involved in everything we do, breathing, heart beating. We can't get rid of muscular effort, but we want to reduce muscular effort so that it's at a functional level. Then as what we want to do gets stronger, if we want to do something more dynamic or stronger, then of course it needs more muscular effort. But we're trying to just get rid of the parasitic muscular effort, or the effort that takes away from the efficiency of the action rather than contributing to the action efficiently. So that's why I would say adapt everything to your own needs. Don't push yourself to do what you see me doing necessarily. So take what I'm doing as a guide and explore within that yourself. And I'm going to start lying down, and I'm going to start switching now into speaking in the first person so that it's really clear that this is my practice and you're welcome to join me. My speaking in the first person acts like a kind of guide for your movement and also for your awareness, and for a lot of the lesson you shouldn't need to look at the screen, and then maybe you want to check in with the screen every now and again. Having a sip of water actually. So I'm going to lie on my back. And just settle into the ground to start with. Sort my mat out, my mat and a blanket. So one of the main things is to be comfortable. So I have this kind of blanket on a carpet. It's softer than a thin yoga mat on a hard floor, for example. So I don't want to lie on a bed or anything that's really soft so I can't feel my body against the ground. I want to feel my body against the hard ground, but I don't want it to be uncomfortable at all. So now I can just settle into the ground, or begin to at least. And I'm just paying attention to what I can sense. I roll my head side to side a little. I'm doing that just as a test, without any effort whatsoever, without any feeling of effort, let's say. So I don't want to push past any grain of resistance. So for me this morning that means I can roll my head easily to the left, and to the right it just doesn't go at all. If I wanted to go to the right, I'd have to push a little, just only a little. I know it would be easy, but I don't want to do it. I'm just assessing. What's more, when I go to the right, if I practice this kind of, or when I have the intention of going to the right anyway, I'm always practicing this kind of specific, this kind of dual focus. There's the attention on what I want to do, as in the rolling the head and what's that like, but there's also this kind of wider focus, this kind of soft focus that can take in other information from the rest of my body as it pops up. So what I notice is, as I go to turn my head to the right, I feel a little something in the right side of my groin. And I can feel that that relates to some, well, I know that that relates to sort of bigger pattern of tension. So I don't want to push into that. When I go to the left, it's easy, everything's soft, everything is melting into the ground. When I go to the right, it just doesn't really want to go. So I leave it. I'm going to leave the rolling the head and stand the feet. And I just very gently moving my knees around a little bit. Really, really soft, really small little exploration of the movement of the knees side to side, opening and closing. I'm trying to not have any set pattern. So I'm just really having a kind of very gentle, slow motion waggle of the knees. My left one goes in and then out, my right one goes in, my left one goes out to the side more, my right one opens, my left one goes in, my right one goes in, they meet, then they both go to the left, my right one opens. So I'm just doing what feels soft, basically. I'm just listening to the contact of the back of my pelvis against the ground and doing these very small movements in my knee of moving. It's not in the knee actually, the movement, it's in the hip joint, the movement, but I'm moving the hip joint and transferring very softly a little bit of weight from one area of the back of the pelvis to another, releasing tension around the hips, noticing tension I have in my groin, and only doing what's comfortable, kind of inviting my breath to soften at the same time as I start to relax into the ground a little bit more. And then I just leave that and pause, see how I feel, see how I'm making contact with the ground now. I feel a kind of spreading out of the contact of the back of my body, a sort of softening into the ground. And then I'm going to just push my legs away, lengthen my legs and rest again. I'm going to stand my feet again, bend my knees, and I'm just rolling my pelvis up and down a little bit. Actually, I'm doing it so little and so small. And for me, I feel like my intention is to go equally both ways with the pelvis. So tucking the tailbone underneath so that my lower back starts to press into the ground a little bit. And then going the other way where I stick my bottom out. Let my belly out, let my lower back gently arch. I've literally only gone one time each way so far in the amount of time that I've been talking about it. That's how slow I'm going. I'm tucking my tailbone underneath again now. But what I notice is that it feels quite possible for me to tuck my tailbone under while I lie in this position. And it doesn't feel so easy for me to stick my bottom out. I feel like there's that grain of resistance again. Like, I know I could do it if I pushed, but I don't really want to. I don't want to push past that. Like, I'm stuck a little bit. So just accept that. Okay, so my intention is to go equally in both directions, but that's not my current reality, so fine. I'm doing this much slower. I always integrate this into my Pilates teaching, but in this instance I'm doing this much slower than I teach it, than I tend to teach it in Pilates, because people want to get moving. So I'm just acknowledging where I have little block, where I have ease of movement. And I'm just going to lengthen my knees again, lengthen my legs and rest. And I'm going to bend my knees and stand my feet and take my knees together. So my feet are kind of hip width, probably a bit wider for me. And then I've knocked my knees in together so the insides of my knees are touching. And I'm going to come back to rolling my pelvis up and down, or at least attempting to. Again, I feel to stick my bottom out, there would just be a strain. There is a strain in my inner thigh. So I'm only going in the direction that, I'm only going as far as I can without any effort, without any strain or discomfort. So I just accepted that I couldn't go both ways equally. And so what I decided to do is to go further and more luxuriously in the direction that already feels good. So when I'm tucking my tailbone under, I'm choosing to go further, feeling that I really enjoy the feeling of my back pressing into the ground. Breathing into the back of the body, and then I just release that so slowly, and I feel my inner hips release, and I start to feel that it's possible for me to go the other way as well. I put my hands on my low belly, and I'm trying to kind of drive my pelvis through a sort of tactile invitation that I make with my hands, my fingers, my palms against my low belly. So my fingers are touching the top of the pubic bone, and my thumbs are quite a bit below my belly button. So my hands are really kind of at the top of the bowl of the pelvis. And from there my hands can push down, and as I stick my bottom out, and I can breathe into my hands there. My hands act as a kind of invitation to press against with my breath. And then as I tuck my tailbone underneath, I draw my back towards the ground, and my hands can act as an invitation for me to sink my belly without any effort. And I just keep going. I'm going so slow and so gently. And I'm sticking my bottom out, and I'm letting my knees come apart again now. So I notice that as I stick my bottom out, my knees want to open. I speed up a little bit because I feel that I've got a little bit of range of movement in both directions now. And with that global awareness that I'm practicing, I just noticed that I was carrying a bit of tension around the shoulders, and as soon as I noticed it, I could release it, and my chest has started moving more easily. And I'm just going to lengthen my arms, lengthen my legs, and rest. I'm going to take my soles of the feet together, just making myself comfortable as I lie on the floor. My posture's changing, and I have a little roll to make myself comfortable. Then I take the soles of my feet together so that my knees are wide. And I'm starting to roll my pelvis a little bit up and down here, so it's really different here. I go so small and so slow. So here, what I need to notice is that in my starting position,
I'm already more arched in my back. I can feel my belly being involved with the movement. I'm going to just reach my arms up. Actually, I'm going to just stand my feet while I rest my hips while I do this. So I reach my arms up and I just cross my hands past each other. My elbows even cross past each other, and I just let my arms slump down. So it's not like I fold my arms or cross my arms in an attitude as if I'm chatting with somebody. Instead, I just cross my arms past each other with straight arms on a diagonal towards the ceiling, and then I let the elbows bend and the hands just flop down either side of my ribs. Sometimes it can be either side of the shoulder, it doesn't matter. I'm going to come back into having my knees open and the soles of my feet together, making myself comfortable. And I'm just letting my belly breathe. And then I'm starting to do my rolling of the pelvis again. And I want to feel... The reason I've got my arms like this is because it helps me feel what's going on in the contact around the back of my shoulders with the ground. And as I roll my pelvis up and down, I can feel my own ribs sliding inside my own skin. I'm going to stand my feet and keep going with this rolling of the pelvis. And as I roll my pelvis both ways, I can feel my rib cage sliding inside my own flesh against the ground, and that's just such a nice kind of soft release for all the fascia up the back of my body. The trapezius, big muscle connecting my back to my shoulders to my neck and head. My eyes are really soft. I take my feet wider still and keep my knees together. And keep rolling my pelvis up and down. And every now and again I just check in with how I'm rolling the pelvis. So I notice then that I got a little bit kind of automatic about it. I was just going up and down without really feeling it. And so I've just slowed down again. There's a place where I can feel that I tense in just in my right side of the groin. So I'm just exploring that. And I keep my feet really wide, but I just open my knees so my knees are in line with my feet, but my feet are still wide. How does that affect what's possible in my ribs, my back? How does that affect what I feel in my contact against the ground? Just going to reach both my arms up and cross them the other way. So I have my right arm closer to my face. Now I have my left arm closer to my face, and I just drop my arms down again. I'm going to continue. Interesting that feels less familiar to me, so I want to just play with it a bit. So I'm just waving my arms around a bit and seeing with how can I make that second side feel a bit more familiar. There we go. I've just settled into that different arrangement of the arms. And then I come back to having my feet kind of more or less hip width, or a little bit narrower than they were at least. And I feel my ribs sliding inside my flesh. I'm going to just lengthen my legs away from me, keep them just micro bent, fractionally bent, stick my heels to the floor with my legs having this little bend, and point and flex my toes just a little to send this push and pull up through the legs, through the spine, so I can feel my pelvis sliding inside my flesh, the bone of the pelvis sliding inside the flesh, and I can feel the bones around the shoulder girdle, the thoracic rib cage and the shoulders sliding inside the flesh at the top of my torso. I can feel a little bit my scalp moving against my skull. I just rest. I'm going to unfold my arms as well and bring my arms down by my side, resting with my arms long and my legs long. Feeling a nice contact now with the ground. Starting to release a little. Just going to keep going with that little push-pull oscillation. Long legs with a little micro bend, pushing and pulling my toes towards my shins and away from my shins. Little point and flex of the foot, but with my heel, importantly with my heel absolutely stuck to the ground, so the heel isn't sliding in the ground. And just feeling how that goes up through my body. I'm just playing with doing one foot at a time, just to see what that does. And what it does is quite different side to side. And I go back to doing both together. And even though doing one at a time was difficult, I feel like it's clarified something and made it easier to do them both together. Now my head is really nodding as I point and flex my toes, feet rather. I just rest again. I stand my feet. See how I feel. I open and close my knees a few times, softly. Noticing what that feels like now. It feels possible for me now that that's a little smoother. So I want to open my knees a little further than I was going before, quite a bit further actually than I was going before. I keep my feet open, keep my knees open, so my knees are open but they're not just completely dropped to the side. I'm just going to close them again while I'm talking and then open. So I open my knees, my feet are started more or less parallel, something like that. I'm a bit wider but it's fine. I open my knees so I'm on the outer edge of both feet and I'm just rolling my pelvis up and down, a really small movement, faster, so really small so that it can be fast. Feel my belly going blah, 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 in and out, blah, 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 blah. And my legs are active, not hanging down, otherwise it would be very difficult for me to roll my pelvis. My knees are kind of fractionally flying up and down a little. And then I lengthen my legs and rest. I bend my knees and bring them back to standing. Just see how I feel on the ground now. Interlacing my hands and bringing my hands behind my head. And coming into a bit of a sit-up. See how it feels lower down. This is just a test. I'm not trying to do sit-ups. I'm just lifting the head and seeing how it feels. I'm not worrying about how I do it. Just lifting the head, looking towards my belly, towards my groin. And lowering my head again. I leave my hands behind my head and I let my elbows just open towards the ground. And I come back to arching and rounding the back a little. And I feel how different it is now that my hands are overhead. And I want to go a little bit deeper into an arch because it feels really nice now. So I just do what feels nice, sticking my belly out, arching my back a little, having a little stretch and a little wriggle. I feel really breathing into my low belly. And then I'm also wanting to lift the pelvis just a little bit, so sticking the bottom out, arching the back, feeling my front ribs really soft, my low belly out when I breathe, my chin tucks incidentally. And then I roll through the middle and I just tuck my tailbone underneath and I press my feet into the ground to lift my pelvis a little bit. And I just feel how my ribs roll up and down off the ground. And I just keep going. Sticking my bottom out if I want to, arching my back as much as I want to. And then softly tucking my tailbone underneath. I feel my upper ribs are very open because my elbows are open. So just play with very softly, very gently. Pushing my feet into the ground to lift my pelvis. And I'm going to imagine that I'm kind of pulling my tail between my legs. I'm just looking forwards now and reaching my hands down towards my feet a little. So my head is lifted and I see how I just need to rest my head down, arch my back. Gonna lift my pelvis and lift my head. I'm just playing really softly with the relationship between the head and the pelvis. I can feel at some points it's easier for me to lift my head, and at some points it's harder for me to lift my head. And I just lengthen my legs and then bring my legs all the way over my belly. I've still got my head lifted, it feels okay for me. Starting to feel it a little bit in the neck, so I'm just going to lay my head down and rest my legs down. I bend my knees and stand my feet. I think I've crawled up my mat a little bit, so I'm just going to shuffle down. And I take my knees over my belly. I have a very soft roll from side to side. Noticing my contact with the ground. Noticing how, where I can melt. And placing my feet back down, lengthening my legs just for a moment. Resting. And then standing my feet again with bent knees. Coming back to rolling the pelvis up and down. And then lifting my head and continuing to roll the pelvis up and down. I can cradle my head with my hands if I want. I just want to feel what's the relationship between my pelvis and my head. My pelvis rolls up and down and I let my head be responsive to that in whatever way it just happens to be responsive. I'm going to rest down for a moment. I'm going to do a few intentional variations of that, and it's really, really important here that anybody following doesn't treat these as sit-ups, because you really risk damaging yourself, and certainly you won't get the benefit even if it's not damaging. So I'm bending my knees and standing my feet. I'm only going to do very soft, very small, little curious explorations of variations on the movement that I was doing between the head and the pelvis. So I'm going to lift my head just a little, cradling it in my hands. My jaw and my eyes are soft. And I start to roll the pelvis up and down a little bit, like I have been for a lot of the practice so far today, and I just see what happens with my head naturally. If I don't place any restriction on the movement, does my head lift and lower or get affected by the pelvis in any way? Just going to rest my head down and rest for a moment. Now I'm going to continue. I lift my head to preset. I'm going to just gently arch my back just a little, and then as I tuck my tailbone underneath, I feel my belly sinking. I just feel that I can lift my head a little bit higher. I can press my mid back into the ground a little bit more. So as I arch my back, my chest opens and my head comes down a little, even maybe towards the ground completely, and then as I tuck my tailbone underneath and my belly sinks and my back sinks in towards the ground, I feel my head lifts. So I'm doing that intentionally, slowly. I'm feeling this combination. Pelvis tucking under so the lower back presses into the ground, and I lift my head. I'm not interested in forcing it. What I'm interested in is feeling how can it happen naturally. I notice, for example, that when I stick my bottom out and stick my belly out, my head wants to come all the way down, and I even want to open my elbows all the way up, so I let it happen. And then when I tuck my tailbone underneath, I feel I can press my belly in towards the spine, press the back in towards the ground, and lift my head. I'm going to lower down and rest. So now, how can I go the other way? What's the other combination? So I'm going to lift my head. I'm actually squeezing my elbows a bit more in to support my head a little bit more. So I'm just squeezing my head with my elbows, and I'm not lifting my head very far. Just want to hold my head there with my arms while I have a think. So I'm just going to come back to rolling the pelvis very gently both ways. I can feel that as I do that, personally, naturally, as I tuck my tailbone underneath, my head comes a little bit higher, just as I was doing intentionally previously. So now I want to change the variation. I'm going to tuck my tailbone underneath, feel my back pressing into the ground, and I'm going to just artificially lower my head a little bit. So now, as I roll my pelvis down and I stick my bottom out, I'm going to lift my head. I have to be very sensitive and careful with it. Then as I tuck my tailbone underneath, my lower back comes into the ground and I lower my head. I'm going to gently arch my back. By sticking my bottom out, it's got to be small. And I'm actually lifting my head as I do that. And then I tuck my tailbone underneath so my lower back presses into the ground, and I let my head lower. Now that I've found that, I've coordinated it, I feel I can get a little bit bigger and smoother with the movement. Again, I feel I can get bigger and smoother with it because it feels like one movement. So even though I had to think how to reorganize the movement, now that I've found this coordination, I feel that as I stick my bottom out, my pubic bone pushes down, and it's like that pulls my forehead towards my pubic bone. It's like my forehead and my pubic bone want to look down towards my feet at the same time. I play with how I'm holding my head so that I can allow different positions for the elbows. So my elbows start to participate a little bit more rather than just gripping around my head. And I want to rest completely for a moment, lay my legs long, resettle into the ground for a rest. I feel I have a much greater sense of my upper body, interestingly. My arms, my fingertips, back of my shoulders, all feels, the front of my chest as well, all feels very, very present, very sort of expanded and more present for me than the rest of my body. I'm going to bend my knees again, stand my feet again, interlace my fingers. I'm going to interlace my fingers the other way, than my non-habitual way. Interlace my hands behind my head. Lift my head a little off the floor. And I'm just coming back to rolling my pelvis up and down without thinking about it and see what happens. And I have bizarrely now changed the coordination that comes naturally. So when I arch my lower back, sticking my bottom out, my head now lifts without me thinking about it. I'm going to artificially change it back the other way, so I lift my head and I tuck my tailbone under. And I stick my bottom out and I let my head lower. And then the next time that I've tucked my tailbone underneath and I lift my head, I really want to make sure I haven't tucked my tailbone under very much. It's still very small, the movement in the pelvis. But I'm just staying here now, so I have a really flat back against the ground. And I'm staying with my head lifted. And I just want to breathe into the back of my body here. So I'm definitely using my abdominal muscles to keep my head up. I can feel that I'm using my abdominal muscles because my belly moves a very little bit, or rather the front of my whole torso. I can see it moving a little bit. But really I can feel the back of my ribs, back, kind of low back, middle back and sides of my ribs expanding into the ground as I stay here. I feel my abdominals working. I think I could soften around my arms and chest a bit more. Come up a little bit higher. So I'm working intentionally more my abdominals now, I'm working quite hard. And I want to be free in the hips, so just give my knees a little open and close just to check my hip joints are free, they are. I'm going to come into a double knee fold. And just come into little curl ups here. Not going all the way down. Oh, a doorbell. Just little curl ups, so I'm really working hard now in my upper abdominals and trying to stay soft in my hips. And I pull my knees in a little bit more and flex my feet and I keep going. And I start to look beyond my knees. Let my elbows open and close a little bit. I'm shaking a little bit, really feeling my abdominals working. And I want to go, I can feel them working, but it's slow and controlled, and I want to just power a little fast things, little pulses before I finish. So I'm going to go really fast. Ba, 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 ba. Kind of feel my skin sliding against the floor again. I'm trying to leave my pelvis quite passive, but this small fast thing makes me slide inside my own skin, and I'm working hard, a little bigger. Soft hip flexors, knees and hips relaxed. Finding my feet a little bit, flexing my feet a little bit rather. And I'm going to rest all the way down. Hee hee hee. Wow, abdominal muscles. So how do I feel now? So they're quite aware of my shoulders against the ground. After I've done that abdominal work, I actually feel less contact in the back of my ribs, so I've clearly worked a bit hard. And I've now got a little bit of leftover tension in my back, which isn't totally desirable, but whatever, it'll sort itself out. I'm feeling a little more arched now than I was, conversely. I'm going to bend my knees and stamp my feet. And I just want to softly, before I roll over onto my belly, just want to softly mobilise my arms, very softly. I feel like I haven't done a lot with my arms, so I'm just going to stretch my hands out onto the floor either side of me and sweep them down over my belly, over my hips, over my belly. So my arms cross over each other, and as they cross over each other, they come up. And they start to uncross as they go over my face. That just happens easily. I couldn't keep them crossed if I wanted to. And I let the arms slide out and down to the side, long arms, and I again sweep them up over my pelvis, over my thighs. And I let them cross, long arms. And they open up over my face, and I feel the tissue in my chest opening. And then down again. Oh, I had such bad tension in my shoulders last night. Just remembered. Opening, sweeping round. And I'm actually crossing over, I'm changing over which way my arms cross past each other each time. So one time my left hand is closer to my body and my right arm is on top. Then they uncross. And the next time my right arm is closer to my body and my left arm is on top. And then I just leave my arms up and lengthen my legs down. And I have a little stretch through one side and then through the other. So I want to feel a connection from my foot to my hand on one side of the body, and then from my foot to my hand on the other side of the body. And actually, I want to take this a bit further. I feel it's good for me. So as I reach my, I'm just if I start with both arms and legs long, I just need to rest actually already. If I start with both my arms and legs long, above my head, and the feet lengthened down and away, I've only just got enough space to do this. Then, if I stretch my right fingertips and my right toes away from each other, I can feel that I'm getting longer in the right side of my waist and the right side of my ribs. And then I do the same thing on the other side. So if I stretch my left toes and my left fingertips away from each other, I feel like getting longer on the left side of my body and shorter on the right side of my body. I just do that one more time each way. I'm going to play with flexing the foot, pushing the heel away, connecting the heel to the hand on each side. And then I'm going to go further so that I start to go into a bit more of a side bend intentionally. So rather than just stretching my right hand and foot away from each other, I keep stretching all my limbs and I side bend to my left. So I'm still looking up to the ceiling, but I've swept both heels to the left a little and both hands to the left a little, and my head slides to the left. So I'm in a side bend to the left, and the side bend is all the way from my feet to my hands. It's not just my spine, it's my whole body. And I come back through the centre and I sweep the other way, side bending, sliding so that I look towards the ceiling still with my head. I haven't rolled my head. I'm just opening up the left side of the body, closing the right side of the body a little. And I do it the same thing the other way, and the same thing the other way, and the same thing the other way. For me, especially because I'm dragging on the carpet, there is a muscular effort to take my pelvis and my ribs side to side And I'm drawing my lower ribs in so that I feel I'm not arching my back too much. I notice that naturally I want to really arch my back. I'm just going to go on a diagonal so I've got more space. That might not work actually. Anyway, side to side with my hands and feet at the same time, and my head looking at the ceiling all the time. I really don't have enough space for this, unfortunately, even though I've got lots of space. I'm just going to rest for a moment. I feel my arms have had enough there. To actually rest my arms, I'm going to do the same thing I did earlier. So my feet are standing, my knees are bent, and I'm just going to cross my arms past each other and let them drop down over my chest. Just breathing here for a bit. Letting my shoulders rest, letting my back rest. I'm just gently rolling my feet side to side while my knees are still standing. So this is very subtle and very tricky. But while my knees are bent and my feet are standing, rather than opening and closing my knees, I'm keeping my knees standing with my knees kind of pointing towards the ceiling and my feet standing. And I'm just rolling a little bit of weight to the inner edge of both feet and then the outer edge of both feet. I want to do that just to help the alignment of my knees and feet. I do not have optimal alignment of the knees and feet. Whatever. Rolling weight to the outer edge of the foot and to the inner edge of the foot. It's small enough that all the time my whole foot is in contact with the floor, not lifting at all. I'm just rolling, and I can feel that does something in my knees. It's about my knees. So even though my knees are staying still in space, there's a lot going on at the base of the knee with the fibula rolling around the tibia. I'm just going to lengthen both legs down and relax my arms down. And I'm going to come back to lifting my arms up overhead. And sweeping both hands and feet to one side. When my hands and feet go to the left, I feel the whole left side of my body opening and the right side of my body closing. And when my hands and feet go to the right, I feel the right side of my body closing, the left side of my body opening. And I'm going to go a bit further so that I'm going hands and feet to the left. I'm in a side bend, so my belly, my chest and my face are all still looking at the ceiling. And from there I start to roll towards my left. Just a bit, and then I come back. So there's a really, for me, it's really intense, the opening up of the right side of the body as I stretch my right fingertips and right foot away from my center to roll me from this side bend with my hands and feet swept over to one side so that I'm in a curve like a crescent moon with my hands and feet to the left, opening up the right side of my body, and then I'm trying to roll onto my left side a little and come back. So I want to do it slowly because there is a lot going on here. And particularly the way back for me is helpful because on the way back I can melt into it more and soften into it more and open up the side of my body more as the back of my body starts to melt back into the ground. So I finish lying on my back, side bent to the left, arms and feet, hands and feet swept to the left, and I'm just going to come back to the centre very gently and rest before I go to the other side to do the same little experiment. I want to rest with my arms down and my feet standing. That's for me, that right now that's the softest position for both my shoulders and my back. And then I'm going to lengthen my legs, sweep my arms up overhead like I did before, crossing them over the face so they get up there very easily. And then I'm going to sweep my hands and feet to the right, just right and left a few times. Feel the difference between left and right. So I feel I've got more distance to go now as I go to the left. And then still keeping my pelvis, my pubic bone, belly, chest and head facing the ceiling, I just sweep my hands and feet to the right. So I'm side bent to the right. I feel the left side of my body completely lengthening. And from there, I try to just continue to take my hand and foot. It's so difficult. This side is so different. It's really different, this side. So how can I roll from this side bend towards my side lying? I get there, but it wasn't easy. So I'm going to really pay attention to the way back. And hopefully the way back can clarify something about the way out. When I roll back to my back, I roll back. I'm still side bent, so I'm rolling from this side bend, hands and feet swept to the right. And then I feel that on this side I need to bend my bottom arm and knee to get me onto my side. I just don't feel any other way at the moment. And when I come back, it helps me just soften and control, softly laying myself back down and lengthening my right arm and leg. And I just keep going. I'm playing a little bit with rounding and arching my back while I'm here because I can feel I'm in quite a deep arch with my chest, and I would love that not to be the case, but oh well. Oh, there we go. I found something different. I found a different way. Softening. Back down. So I discovered that to help me roll from this side bend onto one side, I'm actually rolling my foot intentionally and rolling my hand intentionally. That helps my leg roll. And then rolling softly back. Last one. Where does my head want to go? And softly rolling back. And bringing myself back down through bent arms and legs just to rest. Resting with my arms down by my side, my feet standing, my knees up. I'm just going to open and close my knees a little bit, see how that feels now. I lengthen both legs, see how I'm lying on the ground now. just pointing my toes towards the ceiling with this micro bend in my knees again, and coming back to that oscillation that I can push and pull my spine by sticking my heels to the ground and just very slightly pointing and flexing my feet. And I play with different size of movement, so bigger, slower. Smaller, faster. Using the push-pull of my feet and to push-pull my legs and pelvis. Using that as an invitation to soften my shoulders and ribs into the ground. Bending my knees, standing my feet again. Rolling all the way onto my left. Lengthening both my feet, I'm lying on my left, so my top foot is my right foot. My top hand is my right hand. So I have my top foot below my right foot with my legs long, and my top hand above. Sorry, I have my top foot, my right foot, behind my left foot, which is the bottom foot. And I have my top hand, which is my right hand, above my left hand, which is my bottom hand. And from here, so I'm lying in this position and I'm basically just reversing what I did before. How can I roll from here into a side bend lying on my back? So I'm basically thinking of trying to keep my hands and feet on the floor all the time. I'm slowly rolling myself to look towards the ceiling, feeling my face, chest, belly and pelvis all at the same time rolling, and I'm just delaying as much as I can so that I come into as deep a side bend as possible, and then finish looking to the ceiling, and then come back, and again. And then I just roll in any old way all the way over to my second side. I'm lying on my right. I'm going to lengthen both my arms and legs out kind of in front of me and up and down a little bit. And then to make space for myself. Then I'm again going to roll into my back, but I want to start with my top hand, my left hand now, above the right hand on the floor. Above as in higher up on a diagonal. And I want to start with my top leg, which is my left leg, behind my right leg on the floor. And how can I just drag that hand and foot, leave them where they are as much as possible so they just drag on the floor and create a bit of resistance as I start to roll my torso to the back so that my pubic bone, my belly button, my chest and my head all together come to look towards the ceiling. And I end up really in quite a deep side bend, lying on my back, and then I can reach through that top arm and foot again to bring me back to my side. Again, from lying on my side, soften my chest, soften my belly, trying to roll my pubic bone, my belly, my breastbone, my head all together at the same time, and my left hand and foot just drag on the floor to create a deep side bend. And just do one more. Definitely feel that it's easy to roll on to my side now. Last one. And I'm just gonna release and adjust myself to have a last lie on my back. Noticing my contact with the ground. Rolling my head side to side. Wee, that's different.